Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming down. And I hope you sit back and listen to a lecture on pirate terrorism, modern piracy on the high seas. Today, piracy is a threat to the security and well-being of the entire globe. If you think that piracy has disappeared or is no longer in existence, please listen to these cases. In the Gulf of Aden, heavily armed pirates in a speedboat chased and fired upon an LPG tanker underway. The pirates boarded and hijacked the tanker and are sailing it to an undisclosed location in Somalia. Again, in the Gulf of Aden, armed pirates in 6 boats surround a bulk carrier underway. The master raised the alarm, took evasive maneuvers, and the crew activated fire hoses. One of the speedboats chased the vessel for about a mile. Seeing the alert crew and the aggressive maneuvers, the pirates stopped chasing the ship. Later, the master noticed another 5 boats waiting in the vicinity of the ship. The master immediately contacted the coalition forces nearby. A Chinese coalition helicopter arrived and chased the pirates away, and later a German coalition navy arrived at the location and the ship continued its voyage. And finally, off the coast of Tanzania, 4 robbers in a small wooden boat attempted to climb aboard an anchored container vessel. Alert duty watchmen informed the duty officer, who raised the general alarm and directed the ship search light toward the robbers. Seeing that they were noticed, the robbers aborted and moved away, and port authorities were informed. Ladies and gentlemen, these events, reported by the Piracy Reporting Center in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, occurred within the last 10 days. The picture you see is an example of a fully armed, modern pirate terrorist with automatic weapons. No longer do they use the sword and rapier. No longer do they wear a patch on their eye or a parrot upon their shoulder. In the case of pirates, say, I would like to know whether that profession of theirs has any peculiar glory about it. It sometimes ends in uncommon elevation, indeed, but only elevation at the gallows. These words were spoken more than 150 years ago by one of America's greatest authors, Herman Melville. Today, an overview of what I'd like to talk about. First, an introduction. Then, the golden age of piracy, briefly, and its decline by the 19th century. Modern piracy, we'll go in and talk about the attacks that take place and where they take place. We'll talk about the reporting of the attacks, the efforts today to stop and halt piracy, and then we'll conclude and summarize. Pirates, whether they lived during the golden age of piracy or attack large ships today, have many things in common. Adventure and individualism is one of them. Using violence and brutality, pirates for centuries have used any method possible to get their way. Economic hardship was a reason that many men and women became pirates. There were better rewards at sea than using common labor and taking the menial jobs ashore for little pay. And third, piracy has also been an act of greed, thinking only in the present. Pirates band together, think of nothing in the past, and don't think of their future at all, only what they could take at the given time. Piracy is an ancient crime. It's as old as mankind itself. We hear about Julius Caesar around the year 75 BC, who as a young man was kidnapped by pirates. Several years later, when he became the leader of the Roman Republic, he sought revenge and tried to sweep the seas of piracy. In writings of Homer, in the writings of Polybius, the Roman author, we hear incidents of piracy years ago. The golden age of piracy, however, taking place in the late 17th and 18th century, is the ones that we're probably all familiar with. From the time we were children, we heard about the exploits of Sir Francis Drake, Henry Morgan, Edward Teach, known as Blackbeard. Many of them began as privateers, working for certain countries, being paid by those countries to wipe out pirates from other countries. But when the wars in Europe were over, they turned to pirateering, and they regarded no country as their own. Cruelty was common. Fearlessness and brutality was often committed by these people upon innocent and guilty alike. Torture was common by such people as Henry Morgan and Blackbeard, even to the most defenseless. In the book Caribbean by James Michener, there is an excerpt written by a Dutch seaman who accompanied Sir Henry Morgan on his attack in Panama near Portobello. And as he was torturing and asking and demanding for the gold and silver, he not only tortured the guilty, but also poor nuns and priests were put on the rack or often burned alive. But by the 19th century, piracy seemed to disappear. Why, you might ask? One of the reasons is imperialism. Yes, imperialism. Imperialism, as we studied in school, had a more pejorative connotation. Imperialism meant that countries would take over innocent colonies and exploit them. But indeed, it was because of imperialism that many acts of piracy either decreased or ended in parts of the world. Powerful navies now patrolled most oceans, and patrolling the oceans, their job was to protect the colonies, which were so valuable to the mother country. Second, each country now increased its size of merchant vessels. Being much larger than pirate ships, the pirates were often intimidated. Third, very importantly, finally, in political science, the recognition of piracy as an international crime. Yes, even centuries ago, just like today, anyone caught can be tried and executed by any other country. Piracy is an international crime.